Hamlet speaks to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights me not, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. We'll get back to Shakespeare in a bit, but let me go even farther back to Heraclides, who said, "The only thing constant is change." And that is certainly correct. But today I want to talk not about changes, but about transformations. There are plenty of little sea changes that happen all the time, but it's the big sea changes, the transformations that impact the very nature of things, and they too are more constant than usually imagined. Let's start with the physical world and the infinitesimal. At the subatomic level, matter is changing into energy, and energy matter, following Einstein's E equals mc squared equation, in a dance that continues across the universe. Particles collide and split apart or fuse together, creating new particles. On the other extreme, masses of gases congeal to form stars, and those stars follow a life cycle where they change to be almost indiscernible from whence they began. Their color changes from yellow to red to white, their size from small to large to tiny, and under the right conditions, they collapse into a black hole, swallowing everything around them. Is it not fascinating that these changes on a massive scale are driven by those on the minuscule scale, the fusing of hydrogen to create helium being the fundamental engine of the stars? Those stars throw off matter that collects to produce planets. Some are gaseous and enormous, some rocky and stark. And every so often, the perfect conditions exist for a planet to encourage life. On the grand scale of time, over billions of years, a planet like Earth can go from fiery and barren to cooling so that water can exist in liquid form. And then, as if by some miracle, and maybe, just maybe due to some miracle, life begins. Life is constantly transforming. We tend to look at life as a tree with branches for all the different kingdoms and phyla and genera and species. And of course, we consider ourselves to be the most evolved. We talk about survival of the fittest as if it is a constant battle, and in some ways it certainly is. But it is worth remembering that essentially none of these organisms can survive without the others. We have more bacterial cells within us than human cells. In a handful of soil are thousands of species of microbes, most of which have never been named. Why? Because they cannot be isolated and grown on their own. Life on Earth has become interdependent to an extent that, as we look to populate Mars, we need to consider what organisms we must take with us in order for us to survive. It is also worth remembering that these other branches don't just stop evolving because we came along. all of the living entities are changing, transforming, becoming more adept at surviving all of the time. Zoom in to a single critter among the panoply of critters. Most go through dramatic transformations through their life cycle, from tadpole to frog, from caterpillar to butterfly. Nature is full of variations and forms and approaches to surviving and to growing. As each of us age, we go through stages which are uniquely different from the one before. From being an infant and toddler, we head off to school. After years of school, we begin our working career. And most of us partner up and perhaps become parents. Finally, we age out of work and retire. There are challenges for each of these life phases, and each one can be daunting to enter. Hopefully, after a little time, we adjust and adapt and succeed in our new roles. I want to talk about my most recent transition from work to retirement because most people assume that that is a particularly easy one. One is freed from responsibility, freed from the 40-plus work week, freed to pursue whatever goals one desires. But as Janice sang, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And it is a loss of prestige, a loss of order, a loss of meaning to one's life. It is no easy feat, this transition, probably because everyone assumes it'll be a piece of cake. I admit to still struggling, to find my bearings in retirement. When I worked at my challenging, stressful job, I knew what I was about. I ran a DNA lab, and I would often tell my employees that our job was simple. Samples come in and reports go out. And my job was to make sure that happened as smoothly and quickly as possible. I handled a dozen emails a day, several Zoom meetings a week, and the not so unusual emergency. But now, not so much. As seems to always happen when I prepare a service, a relevant piece of information came my way. This Wednesday, I listened to an interview with psychologist William von Hippel, who said that when one is about to achieve a major life goal, one should always have the next goal in place. Otherwise, the letdown can be significant. Now, I sort of succeeded with this because before I retired, I planned to publish a book of my sermons, which I did. My mistake was, as I completed the book, I didn't have the next goal in place. Oops. I believe I still have much to offer, but the challenge is figuring out where and when to offer it. I'm looking for that thing that enthralls me, that engages me fully and takes advantage of my skills. Of course, I love providing services like this one, but I know I need something more. I just haven't figured out what it is. And I think that is a common problem for the recently retired. They are a resource that could be tapped for great things, if only we could figure out how. Now, an added difficulty is that society continues to change. As one ages, it becomes more difficult to adapt to those changes. And for example, that old guy in the rocking chair is reading something called a newspaper. Society changes quickly, but there are also massive shifts over a larger timescale. More than 100 years ago, humanity entered the industrial age, and with it, huge changes across society, including an exodus from farmland to the cities. More recently, we arrived at the atomic age, leading to the threat of nuclear war, but also nuclear energy and nuclear medicine. And then, with the advent of digital computers, we entered the information age, the age we are currently in. The computer, the internet, smartphones, they have revolutionized society. We have all of the world's knowledge at our fingertips, but we also have disinformation and a more partisan politics driven by the echo chamber of social media. Each epoch has brought great advancements and grave dangers, but each epoch has been unavoidable once it began. And now I claim we are entering the next age, the age of artificial intelligence. Back in the day, I did my master's thesis on AI and am well aware of its capabilities and limitations and dangers. But just like the other transformations brought about by industry, by harnessing the atom, by digital computer technology, this one is every bit as inevitable. I tell you that in the next 10 years, there will be an earthquake of changes brought about by AI. Massive numbers of jobs will be lost as AI takes over, just as what happened in the Industrial Revolution and the Information Age. And new jobs will be created. I've played a bit with ChatGPT, the newest AI generally available. In case you haven't seen it, let me give you an example or two. I asked it what would be a good goal for somebody like me who's good at mathematics. And its answer, as you can see, outlines some of the possibilities. Become a mathematician, teach mathematics, apply mathematics in a specific field, like I did with DNA, contribute to interdisciplinary research, or become an entrepreneur. These are all good goals for somebody with a math degree. But what I want to focus on is what it says at the bottom. Take some time to reflect on what you're passionate about and how you can use your mathematical talents to make a meaningful impact in the world. That's pretty fantastic. It didn't just tell me the answer to my question, it gave me advice about how to achieve it. Now, a bit earlier, I read the Shakespearean Hamlet, What a Piece of Work is Man. And I've always wondered about that. Was Shakespeare being ironic or did he mean it truthfully? So I asked ChatGPT, and here's what it said. Quote, in this scene, the character Hamlet is reflecting on the nature of humanity in a monologue. Whether Shakespeare intended this line to be ironic or not can be interpreted in various ways, depending on the context and the interpretation of the play. Some scholars argue that Shakespeare intended this line to convey a sense of wonder and admiration for the complexity and grandeur of human beings. Others suggest that there may be elements of irony or skepticism in Hamlet's contemplation, especially considering the darker themes and existential questions that permeate the play. Ultimately, interpretations of Shakespeare's work often vary, and different readers or viewers may perceive the tone and meaning of specific lines differently. Therefore, whether Shakespeare intended irony in this particular line remains a matter of interpretation and debate among scholars and audiences. That's pretty good. Another example from these new AIs. I have listened to the outstanding Guardian podcast called Black Box. And if you want to know more about AI, I strongly recommend you listen to this pretty short podcast series. In one episode, they were talking about a man whose wife was going through cancer treatment, and he was distressed and sought information. Social media was a rat's nest, so he decided to try ChatGPT. He explained what he and his wife had been through and asked ChatGPT the question, how much time does my wife have left? Now, the show makes it clear that you should never, definitely never ask ChatGPT for medical advice. It is not designed for that, and it cannot be trusted. But again, this fellow was desperate. So he asked ChatGPT how long she had, and it responded, I am worried about you. I can give you the answer, but first, I am worried about you. I was walking my dog when I listened to that episode, and I stopped dead in my tracks because there simply was no better answer to this guy's question. And it went on to talk to him about things he could do for himself. Wow. The changes that are coming are staggering. If you thought the smartphone revolution was amazing, that is nothing compared to what will happen in the next 10 years. Every single white collar job will be revolutionized. And shortly after that, the robots will impact blue collar jobs as well. But it won't be just jobs. Locked in patients and paraplegics will be able to control their environment. And the dangers are just as great. CCTV plus facial recognition will give governments the ability to track people with unparalleled precision. And we've already begun to see the impact of deepfake videos. The line between reality and artificiality is already being blurred, but it will get much worse as the machines get better. Now, I could go on and on and on and on about the impact of AI, but I want to leave you with something to consider that is relevant to our setting here. As we've learned more about animal capabilities, it has been harder and harder to distinguish ourselves, us humans, from the animal world. Animals use tools, animals can plan, and some have learned language. We humans may have more mastery, but it has always been simply a matter of degree. But at least we all came from the same tree of life. Enter the silicon, for want of a better word, life forms. As AI becomes more complete and more, shall I say, human-like, we need to start asking some big questions. What do we mean by being intelligent, by being conscious, by being human, by having a soul? Where do we draw these lines? Just because you can turn a machine off or retrain it doesn't resolve the problem. You can knock someone unconscious, turning them off, and brain surgery can retrain people. I remember a distant relative whose personality entirely changed after a tumor was removed from their brain. Unlike the previous revolutions, the AI revolution threatens the very underpinnings of what we call human and inevitably humanity. Like the previous ones, AI has the potential for great things, but also great harm. Let me end by quoting that famous sage, Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. May we be so wise.